I am Darren Bousman, and I am the director of Repo the Genetic Opera.
I am Alexa Vega, and I play Shiloh Wallace in Repo the Genetic Opera.
It actually the idea came from Terrence Zanunich and Darren Smith, who wrote it as a stage play. And I was lucky enough to direct the original run of the stage play back in 2001, 2002. And I loved it. It was something that was so different and just so out there. And I said to them at the time, if I ever get the chance, I want to turn this into a movie. And they kind of like, yeah, haha, sure. And then the next year I got Saw 2, and then Saw 3, and then Saw 4. And I came back to them and I said, I want to make this my next movie. And that's how it started. And I think that for me, I wanted to do something just so out of the box. You know, the Saw films were great, but they were very formulaic. They became like a formula was made and I had to stick to that formula. I wanted to do something that was what I wanted to see, something that I liked. And I love musicals, and I wanted to bring my spin on a horror musical. Well, I mean, it was really hard for me going from something that was safe, like Saw, into something that was extremely unsafe, like this, because I had two strikes against me. Number one, musicals are a very specific genre that only a very specific group of people like. Then on top of that, it was a horror film, which is also a very specific genre that only a specific people like. And a lot of times the two don't cross. Horror guys aren't going to go watch a musical. Musical people aren't going to watch a horror film. Yeah, and so I basically cut my audience right in like Saw kind of was cut in half. I cut that in half and a half and a half and a half, and I have this little bit left. But, you know, it was all about taking risks. I don't want to be the guy that's just known as the Saw guy. I want to do something that, again, will live on after me. And, you know, I'm inspired by movies like Rocky Horror Picture Show and Jesus Christ Superstar, because there's something about music. You mentioned you went home and listened to that Alice Cooper. Music transcends, and you know, when I work out, which I try to, even though I've gained like 100 pounds.
You're looking good, Darren.
Thank you. I listen to my iPod. I listen to music, and when I'm in the car, I listen to music. When I go home, I watch a movie. And there are two things that people do on an everyday basis. I ask you, I would call you a liar if you say that I don't know anyone that doesn't watch movies or listen to music. Everyone does. And so I wanted to try to combine those two in a way that would, again, transcend. Something that would be around long after me, that people would still listen to the music. And that's what I hope we accomplished, you know, and the music is great. I think they did a great job with the music, and it's just an awesome album with an eclectic group of people singing on it. Because everyone is turning out the same movie over and over and over again. Movies are cookie cutter. It's like a factory. No one takes risks anymore. And I wanted to take a risk. I wanted to show Hollywood that you can take risks. You don't have to make the same movie 40 times over and just call it something different. And, you know, that's why I did Repo.
Yeah, I mean, originally when Repo was sent to us, my agents passed on it because it was so weird and different, and it wasn't until I got a hold of it was like, are you guys kidding me? This is the coolest thing that's come around in a long time. It's so different and unique, and as an actor, you want to be able to do characters that nobody has done before. You want to create your own thing, and with Shiloh, I was able to bring as much as I could to that, and then with their help, they just made her come to life, and it was great. It's a great experience. You know what appealed to me about this film was it was unlike anything I'd ever seen, heard of, or even been approached with. And from the moment I talked to Darren about it and sat down with him and went over it, I was hooked. I caught the Repo bug. But no, it was just the music is so crazy, and I've seen musicals before, and it had that kind of Rocky Horror vibe, but I was doing Hairspray on Broadway the time that I was seeing all this, so I was used to that happy, sweet musical, family fun thing, and coming from Spy Kids, it was just a very family friendly oriented film. This had the edge, the spunk, definitely everything that I needed to, cross over into the more adult kind of characters. And what's great is Shiloh has this nice arc during the film where she starts off as a little girl and ends up as kind of this young woman. So, and I was able to do that all on screen. And we had to record everything before we went and shot it. So there wasn't changing anything. You weren't allowed to change it up on the day because it was already recorded. So whatever you did in the studio had to stay that way. And that's what was really cool, because we were testing ourselves in areas that we'd never been tested in before, and it's exciting to try something new. I mean, as an actor, that's what you want. You don't want to do the same thing over and over again. that's why it's so fun to pick like crazy new weird characters. And when Repo came along, it's the craziest, weirdest thing I've ever seen, and that's why I love it so much.
Well, the first thing I'll say is that when I was doing this movie, it was important to me to try to break away from the Saw franchise, and I wanted it to look completely different. And the first thing I did was I decided I didn't want to shoot it on film because the Saw films had all been done on film. So I went with HD. And HD has a crisper, kind of more clean look to it. And then I went with this DP, Joseph White, who was a good friend of mine, went to USC, and I wanted to go with like a fresh perspective on cinematography. David Hackle, who was the production designer of this, is directing Saw 5 now. He's one of my best friends, and I was like, David, I want to do something. I want to do a new look at the future. My basically inspiration was circus carnival mixed with propaganda, like 1940s, 50s Russian propaganda, German propaganda. And so I said I basically wanted a carnival on acid. And the influences, though, very much so, I would say Terry Gilliam. Terry Gilliam, even Ridley Scott from a Blade Runner perspective. I really love, Brazil and Blade Runner kind of mixed, as well as having that kind of kooky, zany vibe of Rocky Horror Picture Show. One of the things that I love is mixing the future with the past, and thus this Victorian kind of look in the costumes and the house, yet set in a room of holographic images projecting from walls. Yet here you have a girl dressed like she should be in the 30s, 40s, 50s, something like that. Even the 1800s in some of her outfits. Yeah. Yet the house is Victorian and this futuristic, like. So I really wanted to try to mix those two worlds. Saying because in society, there's almost a cycle of society. What's cool and hip now will die, and then they'll pull something retro, and now that's cool and hip. So I was thinking in the future, even though they've got futuristic things, they've gone back in time, and this is now cool and hip, that kind of outfit and look. I also wanted it to be really colorful. Dick Tracy was a big inspiration for me, because Dick Tracy is a very comic booky look movie, and I loved the way that Dick Tracy used color. And we ended up using a lot of the same gels, called Storaro gels, that Dick Tracy used, the harsh yellows, the harsh reds, oranges, blues. I wanted this to be colorful, and like you said, I was really paying attention in this movie to the visual aesthetic of it all. The reason that we use the comic books was twofold. This movie is a very comic book movie. It looks like a comic book, and so we wanted to give it that real comic book look to it. But mainly, this is a hard movie to watch the first viewing because everyone is singing, and they're singing their emotions, like you said, and you have to listen to what they're saying. And the majority of people, when you're in a car and you're listening to the radio, what percentage of the time are you actually listening to what the artist is saying? Most of the time, people just listen to the music, like, oh, this is a cool, like, this is a Kanye West, and they're like, yeah, cool. But if you actually listen to what the artist says, so what we use the comic books for is to bridge that gap. If you weren't listening to what the people were saying and you needed to know specific important story points, we put them out for you almost as a narration through the movie. And, it helps guide you through the movie a little bit to say, okay, here's what you need to know. Marnie and Roddy were married, and then they met Nathan, and Nathan took Rod. So you need to know that kind of information. The worst thing in the world would be is if, you're watching the movie and you have no idea what the hell's going on. So these comic books try to bridge that gap. My biggest hope is that fans start talking about it. And, this is a movie that is made by fan reaction. And what I'm hoping is that after tonight, when reviews start coming out and people start talking, that the people higher ups start seeing that and saying, you know what, there are people talking about this. This is catching on, because right now no one knows what the movie is. No one knows really what to say about it or what to do with it. And I think that's why I wanted to come to Fantasia. Is I love movies like this, and I guarantee there are a lot more people like me out there. And it's hopefully opening everyone's eyes up to say there are people like me out there. So that's what I hope. People just start talking about the movie.
Yeah, same way, that we couldn't ask for anything more but the fan support. So if we have the fan support, then that's exactly what we were aiming for.